Hello and welcome to another episode of the Losers Win Again Fantasy Football Channel. I am your host, Jacob Brown, and here today we're going to talk about everything you need to know about tight ends for the Week 1 NFL Draftkings main slate. Week 1 will be less than 2 weeks away by the time you're hearing this, and we have a lot to cover. And I have all the info you need to build your bankroll this NFL season. After months of research and weeks of preparation for this Week 1 slate, this is what I found most important for you to know. So let's get after it. Knowing the implied team totals is a great first step into figuring out what type of game environments are projected. When thinking about the tight end position, you want a team with a high implied team total. For example, the Chiefs have an implied team total of 28, the highest implied total on the main slate, which makes it clear you should have interest in Travis Kelce as he is projected to be Patrick Mahomes' top target. Take a look at the rest of the implied team totals. This is very likely to update before Week 1 kicks off. To stay up to date, subscribe to my social media outlets for updates until the slate locks. I have a TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, and a YouTube channel, of course, where you're watching right here. If you enjoyed this content, please hit that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell. Let's go ahead and move on to the rest of the implied team totals on this Week 1 main slate. To top off this implied team totals list, we got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Arizona Cardinals with an implied team total of 28. I definitely have interest in both teams with their tight ends. Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce, and Zach Ertz for the Arizona Cardinals. I'm not recommending you guys to play tight ends in the flex. I'll hardly ever recommend that. So that's definitely out the window, but I definitely want pieces of both these teams. And Zach Ertz is just too cheap. Travis Kelce is probably going to be the number one option, especially the first couple weeks of the season for Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, I like both these tight ends. Moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Raiders. I like both these tight ends here as well. Gerald Everett for the Chargers, Darren Waller for the Raiders. Both are at great price points. I like Gerald Everett mainly because of his price point. You got so many expensive guys with Justin Herbert stacks, and that's a way to get cheap at the position. And then for the Raiders, Darren Waller's really cheap. We'll discuss why he's so cheap later on, but I believe $5,400 for Darren Waller's extreme discount. The Colts taking on the Texans. If I'm playing a large field tournament, I might have some slight interest in maybe Mo Alley Cox. I think Brevin Jordan is going to be a great punt play at tight end. I discussed that in my first look video, breaking down the tight end prices a few weeks ago. Definitely some interest in Brevin Jordan. The Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings, both of their top tight ends are questionable right now. Both of them seem like they're going to play, so I would not be surprised if both of them are listed as probable to play by Saturday night, right before Sunday. But Robert Tonyan for the Packers and Irv Smith, both great interest for me. Then we move on to the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm having trouble finding some interest in Hayden Hurst, but if Pat Freiermuth is healthy, I will have some interest in him. Then we take on the Eagles and the Lions. Both of those tight ends I have huge interest in. Dallas Goedert, I think it's going to benefit a whole lot from having A.J. Brown on the squad. And T.J. Hawkinson, he was our sneaky play for Week 1 last year, and it worked out tremendously well. He's a little bit better priced for it this year, so we'll have to see if we can get to him. But he does strike me as someone I have some interest in. Then we move on to the Titans and the Giants. Don't really have a lot of interest in either of these tight ends. Austin Hooper, he's just all right. And Ricky Seals-Jones, I believe, is going to be the starter for the Giants, and don't really have a lot of interest there. Maybe I should consider it a little bit more, but that's only if I'm playing Daniel Jones in some tournament lineups, which I think I'm only going to be considering Daniel Jones as a cash game play. Then we move on to the Baltimore Ravens taking on the New York Jets. I love Mark Andrews this week. if I consider Lamar Jackson in cash, I'm more than likely going to be stacking him with Mark Andrews. And the Jets, their tight end situation is really funky right now. They got CJ Uzomah and Tyler Conklin, both guys that were just like sneaky guys to play last year when Uzomah was on the Bengals and when Conklin was on the Vikings. I don't have a which way to go scenario for these two. My best advice is just stay away from the Jets tight ends. Then we already discussed the Arizona Cardinals and the Chiefs. Moving on to the 49ers and the Bears. Definitely have some interest in George Kittle, and Cole Kmet looks to be a pretty good value play. So definitely got interest in both of those. Washington, Logan Thomas. I think Ron Rivera came out and said about 3 days ago that Logan Thomas will probably not be ready for week 1, but look to have him out there for week 2. We got to keep that updated to see if that's going to change. But John Bates for Washington looks to be a decent punt play tight end as well. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have Evan Ingram at tight end, and if Doug Peterson is the head coach of the Jaguars now, and anything we've known about Doug Peterson is he got Zach Ertz heavily involved, he's gotten Dallas Goedert heavily involved. Expect Evan Ingram to have a brand new role and look a lot better this 2022 season. The Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots, Mike Gesicki's role has diminished. And until his price point drops, I don't have any interest in him. Hunter Henry looks to be a decent play. We'll definitely consider him in my player pool. The New Orleans Saints taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Have some slight interest in Adam Trotman and definitely have some interest in Kyle Pitts. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to Kyle Pitts just due to the other price points that are around him. And the game environment doesn't look very well to me. The Browns and the Panthers. David Njoku for the Browns. If Deshaun Watson was there, passing it to David Njoku, I would have some interest. But we're going to have to just wait and see. I think Njoku's going to have to be a little cheaper for me to want to play him. And then the Panthers have Tommy Tremblay and Ian Thomas. I don't really know what to make of this. I want to say that Tommy Tremblay is the number 1 tight end, and he won't be missing any targets with Ian Thomas out there. Be interested to see what Baker Mayfield does with him. The New England Patriots taking, we already discussed that. But yeah, we already covered all these teams here. Those are my interests just based off implied team totals. When looking to select a tight end, we need to find the defenses that gave up the most Draftkings points to the opposing offenses. In this case, since it is week 1, we are using 2021 data and our best judgment from off-season moves. In the future, these stats will be updated for this season once we have a couple weeks under our belt. A team to point out is the Chargers. They were the worst defense against opposing tight ends last season. With that being said, a player we should consider rostering in week 1 is Darren Waller, as he is poised for a huge performance in week 1. Here's a list of the worst to best defenses against tight ends for DraftKings points averaged in 2021. Here are some defenses you should consider to exploit for the tight end position in week 1. The Los Angeles Chargers were the worst ranked defense in all of 2021 against tight ends. Behind them was the Philadelphia Eagles, the Baltimore Ravens, the Indianapolis Colts, the Cincinnati Bengals, the New York Jets, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, the Green Bay Packers, Washington, Miami, Cleveland, Kansas City, and Jacksonville. These are just some of the defenses that I wanted to discuss just due to the fact they were in the top 15 range. Definitely have interest in attacking some of these teams. You gotta think about it like this. Let's say the Chargers, for instance. They've gone out and they've improved their defense this offseason, of course. But they were the worst team against tight ends last year. Now, they may have gotten better. But being the worst, I mean, what? Maybe they move up maybe like 5 to 10 slots from last year, and maybe they're like a top 20 defense against tight ends, or maybe a top 25 defense against tight ends. That's something to take into consideration. Being a top 25 defense against tight ends is still not good. So definitely have interest in Darren Waller. Probably these top like 6-7 teams, you should definitely consider the players facing those defenses. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on as you're getting ready to roster for the week 1 main slate. Understanding projections is pretty simple. We have our base projection, ceiling, previous 4-game average, and our floor projections. We typically look for tight ends that have high ceilings for GPP plays, which is considered a boom or bust tight end, while a high floor tight end is a safe play meant for cash games. For example, Mark Andrews is a perfect example of a cash game play due to the high floor. He is considered safe, while George Kittle would be more of a GPP play with a high ceiling and low floor. Here's the rest of our current tight end projections. These are very likely to update before week 1 kicks off, so it will benefit you to subscribe to my social media outlets for updates until the slate locks. I have a TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, and of course a YouTube channel. And if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell. Here's the rest of our current tight end projections. Now, we won't go over every single name here on this list, but here's some week 1 projections for tight ends. Mark Andrews at 6,800 is the most expensive tight end on the slate. He's projected to do a 16-10 with a ceiling of 27-10 and an average of 24.9 with a floor of 14.5, the highest floor, highest average, highest ceiling. A little less projected than Travis Kelce, but I still think he's the best tight end on the slate. Travis Kelce sitting there at a 16.5, the highest projected tight end on the week 1 slate as of right now. He has a 24.1 ceiling, a 22.8 average, and a 9.5 floor. George Kittle, 5,900 at 11.2 projection. He has a 22.4 ceiling, a great ceiling, an average of 7.5 and a floor of 6.7. This is a definition of a GPP play if there was one. You got a rookie quarterback, probably going to rely heavily on George Kittle the first couple weeks. So I think it's time to buy high on George Kittle. Kyle Pitts at a 10.7 projection, 12.3 ceiling, 10.6 average, and 7.4. Don't really have a lot of interest in Kyle Pitts this week. We're going to have to see how heavily involved he is in this offense. Like, everyone's saying that Kyle Pitts, the offense is going to run strictly through him. We got to wait and see on that because he did not show that last year. There was glimpses, but there wasn't like consistency of any kind of sort. Darren Waller's probably my favorite all-around play on the week 1 slate. At 5,400, he is at a 14.4 projection, a 15.8 ceiling, a 12-point average, and has an 8.10 floor. These are all very balanced numbers. I wish that ceiling was a little bit higher. But I think this is a game that he's going to smash in. I think he's going to benefit a lot from having Devontae Adams there now. A lot of people aren't going to be double covering him. He's going to get a lot more opportunities. TJ Hawkinson, always excited to play him. He's a little expensive for week 1, but at 4,900, it's a pretty decent projection of 10 points. He has a 14.2 ceiling, a 9.6 average, and a 6.8 floor. No interest in Mike Gesicki. I do have interest in Dallas Goedert, though. He is at 4,500 at a 9.7 projection, 17.6 ceiling, a 14.10 average, and a 5.10 floor. Definitely got interest in Zach Ertz. Love his ceiling of 15.7. He's also got a projection of 9.7. Great average, great floor for his price point. Along with Pat Freiermuth, he's a very balanced tight end. I mean, his ceiling's not super high, but he doesn't have a low floor, and his average is pretty decent. He's at 8.3 for the projection slated for week 1. Robert Tonyan is at a 7.5. He has a ceiling of 9.4. Somewhat of a GPP play for me. Yeah, but those are just some of the tight ends that I have interest in. If you want to look at the rest of this list, subscribe to my Patreon. I have pretty much anything you can think of. I have projections, ceiling, average, floor, ownership, stacking tools, pretty much anything you can think of, I got. So, yeah, let's go ahead and move on. When looking at projections versus salary, that creates player value. That value will either help increase a player's interest or decrease it, depending on the price point and matchup. For example, Cole Kmet is at a great value due to his price point, projection, and game environment, while CJ Uzomah is a bad value due to the price point, projection, and game environment. Here's the rest of our top value plays. This is very likely to update before week 1 kicks off. It will benefit you to subscribe to my social media outlets for updates until the slate locks. I have a TikTok, Patreon, Instagram, and of course, a YouTube channel. Hit that like and that subscribe button and that notification bell if you like this content. And yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the top value tight end plays. Sitting at the top, Darren Waller has the best value at 2.67. Behind him is Travis Kelce. Logan Thomas, if he plays, we see that he's going to be questionable to play. Possibly will miss week 1. Mark Andrews at 6,800 at 2.37. Cole Kmet, Irv Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Adam Trotman. So pretty much everyone that's in this yellow right here, from Darren Waller all the way to Adam Trotman, those are guys that I'm going to be considering in cash games. Definitely having the best value as of right now. Some of the other guys that I do have interest in would be Gerald Everett, TJ Hawkinson, Pat Freiermuth, George Kittle, Zach Ertz. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, this player pool is going to be really small for tight ends. I usually try to keep a tight player pool. But yeah, those are the top value tight ends on the week 1 main slate. Who likes a discount? Every week there's players that are completely overpriced, or there are players that are really underpriced. For week 1, Draftkings typically prices players a lot lower to get interest from casual players to get the opportunity to get any player that they want in their lineup. However, Draftkings messed up big time. Who likes to go shopping for a good bargain? Or who likes to buy low in the stock market? The same thing applies here. There are 4 tight ends that are tremendously underpriced based off last year's performances. For example, Zach Ertz is $4,400 on this week 1 slate, while in week 18 he was at $5,300. That's $900 cheaper than he was in the last regular season game he played in last season. That's a huge misprice that you should consider to exploit in week 1 because the price may never be that low for the rest of the season. Here are the rest of the overpriced and underpriced Draftkings tight ends. This will be updated weekly on my Patreon. Let's go over some names here that are huge discount plays. Darren Waller is at $5,400 for week 1, but last year in week 18 he was at $6,400. That's a $1,000 price difference. I can understand why they decreased his price a little bit just due to the fact that Devontae Adams is now in town. His target share is going to go down a little bit, but I mean, $5,400 for Darren Waller is still pretty cheap. Zach Ertz at $4,400 this week. He was at $5,300 in week 18. That's a $900 discount, and I don't really understand why. I mean, they haven't really added a whole bunch of targets that are going to take away from his target share. George Kittle, an $800 discount after being $6,700 in week 18. He's $5,900 this week. I think that's a humongous discount that we need to go after right away. Logan Thomas, questionable to play, so we won't go over him. Mark Andrews at $6,800 this week, was at $7,500 in week 18. That's a $700 discount. Don't really know why. I mean, Marquise Brown's not there anymore. They only got Rashad Bateman and Demarcus Robinson to take away targets. Maybe Isaiah Likely, someone who we need to discuss in the future. But yeah, I mean, $6,800 is just way too cheap for the best tight end in football last year. Dallas Goedert, he's $4,500 this week. He was $5,100 in week 18. That's a $600 discount. That's pretty cheap. Travis Kelce was at $6,600 this week. He was at $7,000 previous week. That's a $400 discount. Not a huge discount, but something that we should take note of. Also, Pat Fryermuth was also at a $400 difference. But other than that, there's not even too many more notable names. T.J. Hawkinson, he was hurt most of 2021, but he's priced at $4,900 this week. He was priced at $5,200 the last week he played, which is a $300 price difference. But yeah, those are the main ones. If you want to see the players that I think are completely overpriced, follow my Patreon, and we will have this page available with so much more there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, hit that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell to get more content just like this. My Patreon provides sheets we've discussed today and much more for a $5 a month fee. Drop down in the comments to ask me about it. Subscribe to my social media outlets for updates until the slate locks. I have a TikTok, Instagram, of course a YouTube channel, and a Patreon. And yeah, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. And peace.